hate this profile. All right, now we are definitely live. Okay. There is something wrong with this specific profile in OBS. I even rewired it yesterday. It's literally possessed. I don't know what to say about that. Anyways, so welcome to Composer Talk. Let me get this to where we can actually see Jacob.
Hooray!
All right, so welcome to Composer Talk. This is, I don't even know what week it is anymore, but the date is March 21st, 2018, and Jacob is in St. Louis because he runs away every chance he gets. And then let's see here. Yeah, there was a problem with the stream last week. We apologize for that. We apologize for that. There was basically just a glitch on this end. The profile for the software that we use is very glitchy anytime I switch to Composer Talk, but it works every time I use it for every other profile of mine. I don't know what's going on with it.
Maybe we should stream from one of your gaming profiles.
I like money. I like money. I will not delete those. Anyways. And I don't think the gaming community is interested in this stuff. Anyways.
That's unfortunate. They should be.
Well, they aren't. They're more interested in watching me slay dragons and build giant generators that blow up. Alright, so we're going to do a little bit of a rehash of some news that we had from last week, a few new items from this week, and then we're going to talk a little bit about composition-related websites and why they suck.
Yes.
And some other stuff.
So, beginning with a few short news items, this is all from a couple weeks ago because of the glitches we had, but Richard Hundley has died. Hundley was an American art song composer, very, very well known in the vocal and pianistic areas. He recently passed away at the age of 87. There's a very nice tribute to him up on the New Music Box website for anyone interested in checking it out. So yeah, R.I.P. Richard Hundley will be a loss to our community. A second death we have in the composition area of interest is Broadway composer Harvey Schmidt. He recently died at the ripe old age of 88. He is famous for his musicals, particularly for his piece The Fantastics, which is a musical that I'm not particularly familiar with, but my alma mater for undergrad and Zach's as well, Drew University recently put that on in the theater company about a few weeks ago. So R.I.P. to Mr. Hundley and Mr. Schmidt. They will be missed. So we end our sad news for the week. Zach, do we have any tech items that you'd like to?
There's two things. One,
okay.
Today normally on Wednesdays, I don't really have anything to do until Composer Talk. So what I normally do once a month is I enjoy Dorico. Steinberg has a Dorico stream every month, sometimes twice a month, but every month around this time of the month on Wednesday or Thursday mornings, or afternoons for them, mornings for me because I'm an American. But they have these streams and they basically sit there and address community issues, community feedback, and things like that. And it just reminded me how much, especially because right before the thing went live, I was just scrolling through Facebook really quick because I was just like, well, I might as well just wait for the stream to go up and didn't want to do anything else. And I came across a post on the Sibelius on Music Engraving Tips about Sibelius. And it was talking about the authentication issues. And it just reminded me that that's an issue that Sibelius has had for, 3 years at this point since Sibelius 7 came out? And they still aren't fixed. And it just, all hail Dorico for that. So that's kind of newsworthy-ish. And then the other thing is Avid is now reaching a new peak wait time of 5.5 business days to get your responses. So if your Sibelius locks up in the meantime and you've got a project due, good luck.
Write it out by hand.
Sometimes that's not an option, unfortunately, because you got to have things nicely notated. But
right. Well, you can nicely notate things by hand. It just takes a long time.
it does take an exceptionally long
yeah.
time. But yeah, those are really
remember...
the only two techie things. Other than a couple weeks ago, we talked actually almost a month ago about the Avid CEO being knocked down because he was suffering some harassment allegations. That has progressed a little bit, and well, he's guilty. So that's a good company that y'all have, Avid, over there. You know, keep it up. Yeah, I'm already looking for an alternative to Pro Tools. But anyways, so that's about all from the tech side of composition. Really, there hasn't been too much newsworthy, as Jacob mentioned. It's been awfully quiet, and I keep expecting there to be something that blows up. Oh, okay. That's
sometimes quiet is a good thing.
Sometimes quiet is a good thing.
We do have another little tidbit of interest. I just saw this today. This comes up to us from the London Times. But James Macmillan is a very prominent English Scottish composer. Actually, well known for his choral music. An excellent composer. He writes a lot for chorus and chamber chorus, and his piece, Stabat Mater, has recently announced that it will be the first piece ever to be streamed live from the Sistine Chapel. Yes, that's the Sistine Chapel, as in the Vatican and Michelangelo and all this stuff. The piece will be performed by chamber chorus, the 16, which anyone watching who is familiar with early music will probably recognize that name. They're very known for their early music recordings. But they also have a good working relationship with James Macmillan, and will be performing this piece live online. So that's kind of fun news.
And I've got one final bit of news too.
Yes.
That is good news. And this is slightly humorous news, just to kind of cap off everything, but there's a recent discovery from a reliable source that toasters are an instrument.
But Zach, the real question is mayonnaise an instrument?
Yes, people have made mayonnaise an instrument using electronics, and it's wonderful. You can do anything electronics. Again,
I hope they titled the piece "Is Mayonnaise an Instrument?"
It wasn't for a piece. It was a demonstration. Basically, the kid was using it as this is actually very interesting. We'll divert into this for a second, but a kid was trying to prove that music is all around us. All this stuff, and of course, everybody who grew up in the 90s or early 2000s watched SpongeBob SquarePants, things like that. And there's a very famous episode in there in which all of the townsfolk, they're all participating in this marching band. Like, I'm not sure why everyone in the town is interested in marching band, but for some reason they're all in marching band, and they're going through instruments that are acceptable, and Patrick asks the infamous question, is mayonnaise an instrument? And that has just been a perpetual meme, especially in music communities, particularly in higher ed and all that. And so a few years ago, a kid, he was just trying to demonstrate that music is all around us, so he took some contact mics, hooked up to a jar of mayonnaise, and played it like an instrument for a short video. So, yeah, you can still find it. It's wonderful.
I don't think I've seen that video.
You need to. It's great. It's just like 2 minutes of him sitting there, basically like unscrewing it, and then like sitting there and like putting a knife in and like spinning it,
stirring around in it. Yeah.
You can get a lot of cool sounds, just like you can get a lot of cool sounds from toasters, from a reliable source. Anyways, so let's dive in. So what we discussed last week, and wow, we got through that news a lot faster this week. Anyways, but something that we wanted to discuss was something that we deal with a lot, particularly because I'm closing out my graduate studies and Jacob's just starting, so we're on kind of opposite ends of kind of the higher ed spectrum of music, and we've noticed that particularly within higher ed, the composition related websites suck. Like, there's no nice way to put it, but in general, they suck. I mean,
yeah.
Just a year ago, we had the infamous thing with Composer's site going down and losing all of its submission data. Like thousands of submissions were lost. Not submissions, sorry, calls were lost. And like people missed calls because of it. I mean, they suck. I mean, I'm not trying to diss Composer's site because they do a wonderful thing, and I think that they are pretty much the site to go to for calls these days. But I mean, I don't know, Jacob. Why do you think a lot of these composition-related websites just suck so much? I mean,
I don't know. I think a lot of the composition world tends to be still dominated by as you like to say the gray hairs, and who simply may not have updated their internet knowledge for a while, which is understandable.
I like that phrase, internet knowledge.
Their internet knowledge. I think, and it's kind of funny because their composition does overlap with tech in many ways. I mean, you know, I mean, in electronic music particularly. So you would think that there would be a little more attention paid to the quality of these sites, but right. I'm not sure. I mean, you could say it's a composition thing, or maybe it's the 90% rule. You know, as I think I don't remember who said it, that 90% of everything sucks.
I totally agree with that.
Right, and I mean it's kind of true. Composition websites, you know, as important as they are to us, are kind of a niche market. So you don't necessarily have the reach or the money to, in the minds of the people who run these, maybe to justify paying big bucks to get somebody who really knows what they're doing to design the website.
Well, let's just take an example.
Yeah.
I mean, an example that, you know, most people are somewhat familiar with. ASCAP changed recently. Here, let me actually pull that up. I've got a different website pulled up right now, but if I pull up ASCAP, they recently did an overhaul. The old website I did .org instead of .com, my bad. Anyways, the old ASCAP website, I think everybody who used the old ASCAP website can agree it was terrible. Half of it was old HTML code that you just got linked to from a pretty front page. But now, as you can see here, it's a beautiful new website. And I still have, like, you know, I was telling Jacob about this before our last Composer talk that didn't exist. I was telling him how much I enjoy this website and enjoy where they're heading. Just the one problem I have is that there's still corners of it that are just terrible. Like, for instance, the actual, like, submission of a performance, if you're the composer. Now, if you're submitting a performance as, like, a rock musician or something, it's easy as pie. But they just haven't done the area that I use as updated. So, I don't know. It's just it's an interesting thing. So, this is an example of a website that I would say overall is doing much better. Like, I mean, Jacob, you used the ASCAP website before.
Yeah, I have a few quibbles about it, but overall, it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. Now the one that kind of helped spark this discussion, the SCI website. I've got it up on the screen right now, and if you just look at the homepage, it's not bad on the surface. But there's several things. I mean, first of all hail the 90s. I mean, is there anything else you can say about that layout? I mean,
yeah, I mean, it's pretty out of date aesthetically. But I mean, the biggest problem with the SCI website, and we've talked about this, is how logging in works. Because Zach, you have this pulled up on your computer. Yeah. Click on Scion. So or how Scion. I don't know.
It's Scion is how I say it.
So for those of you who may not be familiar with the SCI website, Scion is it's kind of like Composer's site, but it's just for SCI members. It's a listing of opportunities, competitions, call for scores, etc. in the composition world. And you have to be a member of SCI to access it. Okay. However, as we recently see, as Zach has pulled this up on the screen, when you click on Scion on the SCI page, it does not take you to Scion. Neither does it say, you must log in before viewing this. Please log in and then come back to this page. It gives you a link that says, members can access Scion through the SCI account area.
I have not clicked. All right, and I'm logged in now. So,
right.
Where do you go from here? Like, that's the question. Like, I still occasionally click the wrong thing. This is not obvious. You'd think it's under SCI opportunities.
Is it? Nope.
It's under my SCI account, under another link that says Scion. Like, it would not be hard to just redirect it. But they've just dug this rabbit hole of, like, you gotta go here so that you know to go here, so you know to log in, so you know to go to this page, so that you have the link that goes to the final page. And it's like, why? This is why I frequently forget to check it, because it's inconvenient as heck.
On every other website, if you try to go to a page that you don't have access to because you're not a member or not logged in, it will say, you do not have permission to access this page. Please log in, etc., etc. And then you go and log in, and then you click back on that page, and you can get into it.
Yeah, but here's the problem. Like, again, now I'm logged in, and I just clicked the big Scion logo on the menu. It just takes right back to the, hey, you can access this through the My Account area. It's like, what the heck? Oh, it's horrible. The good news is, there's a lot of people complaining about it. Bad news is, we need more people complaining about it. Because, I mean, I've sat in on some meetings with, you know, SCI student council reps and all that, and, like, we all sit there and we literally say the same thing. Why is it awful? Why is it terrible? Why? And honestly, if they were to fix the website and stop sending out Member of the Day updates, it would be a really good thing. Because honestly, then I'd be tempted to, okay, well, every few days, or like, you know, Monday mornings, I might say, okay, who have been the composers of the day for the past week? And then just sit there and scroll through them, see if I like any of them, see if there's anybody who I haven't heard of, things like that. But
right, but when it's sent to you every day, you just get annoyed and you just want to ignore it.
Oh yeah,
right.
I actually tried for a while. I tried desperately for a month or so to actually look at each composer of the day, and I'm just sitting there like, this does nothing. It genuinely does nothing. Like, unless it's someone who maybe you've heard the name and have been meaning to listen to their music, you're not going to actually go out of the way and listen to the music.
Yeah, I had one like that a bit ago. I was like, oh, I've heard of this person. I'll look this person up and remember the day. Music wasn't very good.
Yeah. So in the past like 3 years. So in the or no, you've been in SCI for a couple years. So I mean, in the past couple years since you've been in SCI, you're nearing your 2nd year anniversary, aren't you? I don't know. Either way, so
I don't remember how long I've been in SCI. It's been
almost 2 years, I think. Anyway, so in that nearly 2 years, that's once. Can you think of any other times that you've genuinely thought, "Oh, that sounds cool"? Click.
Not maybe once or twice. Not really.
Yeah. So. And that's average. Like, I think I've done it a handful of times outside of that trial month where I desperately tried to keep on top of it, but it just became too calamitous. But yeah, I mean, I've probably done it about 6-7 times, and that's about right for the amount of time I've been in SCI. I joined almost 8 years ago, right? Yeah, almost 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that just shows that, I mean, and this is 2 members, and obviously small sample size, but I can tell you that that translates very well to the student council. And the student council represent the students who are, by all means, the majority of SCI at this point. Like, I don't think it's the majority as in, I think it's the largest group, not the majority at this point. But,
right.
And these student council people, they weren't chosen because, oh, you're the most astounding. They were chosen because we were the ones that said, okay, sure, we'll help. So, I mean, it's not necessarily that these are the most involved people. So, honestly, there's a chance that this might just be the cream of the crop. I mean, there might be people that have never clicked it. Wouldn't shock me.
It's the kind of thing where perhaps if they did a member of the week instead of a member of the day, you know,
or like a weekly member spotlight that had all 7 in there. Yeah.
And you wouldn't have as many people who got the opportunity to be member of the. Okay, sure, but I think it would do more good. It's kind of like when you're a teacher of guitar or any other instrument. If you give your students you know a gazillion things to do before their lesson next week, they're not going to do any of them. You know, they're going to be overwhelmed. They're just going to be like, well, screw this. You know, I'm gonna focus on my schoolwork, or I'm gonna go play my Xbox. But if you give them if they give them 1 or 2 things to really focus on, then there's a lot more likelihood that they will feel, since they feel able to do it, they will take the responsibility to do it. And of course, it's not a one-to-one correspondence. We're not talking about lessons and responsibilities here, but just information overload is a thing. I mean, you at some point you get so much of it that you ignore it.
Right. So again, this isn't to harp on SCI. I mean, I do have my qualms with SCI, and I think all of us do for any organization we're a part of. But this is an example of they've heard us, but they don't actually believe it's a problem because, again, the gray hair problem. So this is a case where, honestly, the more of us complain, the more likelihood there is of, hey, maybe we should listen to the student council guys and see what they have to say. It's kind of why they have us, I thought.
And there is other good news. I mean, we've looked at we just looked at the ASCAP website, which has been updated recently. The American Composers Forum just recently did a revamp, and their website's much better now. So there are organizations that are starting to kind of realize that the website is an important thing.
They've polished it since we last looked at it, Jacob. The American Composers Forum site, yeah, they've polished it since we looked at it. Yeah, it's actually fitting in my screen properly now. Yeah, so honestly, I'd say out of because I consider these 3+ composers sites, so these 4 total, to be kind of the sites to go to for composition. Composer's site, it does perfect. It's simple, it catches your eyes, everything where it needs to be. It's even really easy to submit calls to here. I've done it twice. I'm about to do it again. It's easy. The American Composers Forum website, though, right now, I can say I need to remember how to log in. But if I were to log in, I guarantee it would be easy to use because everything's actually organized correct. Yeah, and look! Oh, I hit opportunities! Look what it did! Huh, you need to log in to see this page.
It's actually a little... I think it's actually... This is going back to Composer side. It's actually a little too easy to submit calls. Because...
It does get verified by at least one other human.
What?
It gets verified by one other human before it is.
But I've seen calls on there that they're not in English. That I've seen things that look a little shady.
There are some things that get through like that, but I think it does more harm than good. And the fact that it's easy
more good than harm
brings more good than harm. I am sorry.
Yeah, you said that backwards.
Well, I'm a backwards person, you see. But anyways, so overall, though, I mean, it does so much good that those couple small points, and honestly, I think they're small because most of us are able to sit there and comb through and see, oh, this guy wants to collaborate on this CD, and I just have to give him $85 to have my piece on it. You're not going to be featured on there, or if anything, he is going to use like a 1-minute clip of your piece that you submitted and use most of the 85 to cover what he wants. And I mean, there might be a call like what I just mentioned that's legit, but unfortunately there's so many that aren't legit that you just can't trust it. Now, just speaking of those, I'm going to plug for this really quick. You gotta look for specific ones. Like, one thing I have submitted to, and I'm very happy with how it goes, the Ossia Project. That's not a CD, but it's a publication. It's online, completely digital. I recommend that one. Then you have other things like, there are some people on there that are like, oh, I'm a performer just looking to collaborate with composers. Some of those are shams, but some of them work. Like, I've worked with Robin Mykins on flute, and it was a wonderful experience. I just sent her another piece. Like, I mean, she's wonderful. But there's all these specific cases of you just kind of got to pick and choose, and occasionally, unfortunately, you do have to kind of take the gamble whenever it comes to a site like this, because there might be a perfectly legitimate call that you submit to, and you never hear anything, because, I mean, maybe the conference got canceled, maybe the person that was hoping to do the call for scores, like, died or something. I mean, I don't know. There's any number of reasons why something like that might not come through, and sometimes you just kind of gotta ignore that. But in general, I think the ease of access to submit encourages more people to submit calls, or sorry, to send in calls to get submitted to. Do you call it submitting calls whenever you're submitting the base call? Huh.
I don't know. Posting? Does it have? It has to be approved, so in a sense, it would be a submission.
Kind of, yeah. Well, it's mainly approved to make sure that you're not sitting there just asking people for money to fund your latest thing.
Right, yeah. Right. Hey, send me your piece and I'll consider playing it. I need $20 for administrative fees.
Right. It's like, for instance, this, and just as an example, what you're looking at here is the create an opportunity sheet. It's not that complicated. You tell people a title, a website if it's appropriate, how much it costs, the currency, when it expires, and then the actual call itself. And then you give your name and your email. Yeah. Pretty simple. Like, this is dead simple, and this is a lot easier than it is to submit on SCI, for instance. Like, submitting on SCI is hell. Like, I tried it once, never again. Also, I would like to note that, okay, that's a nitpicky thing. I'm not going to dig into that. Anyway, so, in general, kind of the composery websites. They, in general, they're not great. But I think we're moving in the right direction with, things like ASCAP, American Composers Forum. I think Composer Site is just fine. It might not be fancy, but it gets the jobs done. It gets the job, singular, done. And then the final thing that we wanted to touch on in this topic is individual websites. Let me pull back up the main screen here. Okay. So I can actually see Jacob again. Oh, I can't see Jacob yet. Hang on. I'm pulling you up.
I think I got bumped.
I'm pulling you up. There you are. Okay. So the final thing is individual composer websites. Now, I have a lot of colleagues that I work with day to day, and unfortunately, some of them don't see the value in a website. To that, I always say why. And if they at least have something like, oh, I have a SoundCloud link, or, oh, I have a Facebook page. At that point, it's like, okay, you've got the minimum. Because you need some online presence. But I have two colleagues here that I will not name at the University of Oklahoma that they actually have no website, no social media, and no permanent SoundCloud link. So how do you find this person?
In person?
Yeah, no, I mean, it presents a huge problem. And you can't just, and I'm not saying, oh, you should put it out there for the random chance that someone Googling can find you. No. You put it out there so that, if I run into Jacob at a conference, and I haven't met him before, and he's like, dude, I love your idea of throwing cell phones in the piano. You got anything else like it? I've got an improv group back at, I don't know, Milwaukee or something. Then I'm like, yeah, sure, go to my website. Anything, you can sort it by improv and you can see it. And then, he goes to my website, hits the improv button, and he sees, oh, he's got like these 5 or 6 improv pieces. This looks cool. Nocturne for Dice. What's that? And you kind of just got to have that presence. Like, there's one example I'm going to show. It's actually from a colleague of ours, Dr. Kyle Vanderberg. And let me go ahead and, so I think that this is probably one of the better examples from colleagues that I can think of. And plus, you know, it'll drive his traffic maybe a little bit. Let me switch the display again so we're not just looking at Jacob. All right.
Hooray! Here I am.
Not anymore. You said that after I already got rid of you. Haha.
Oh.
All right. So...
I'm just wandering about. Nothing to look at except my computer screen.
So this website, let me pull it just a little further over just to make it easier to see the whole thing. Okay, so the reason why I want to pull up this website for you guys, for Dr. Kyle Vanderberg, is it's not fancy. It's good, but it's not fancy. It's not flashy. It doesn't have all these moving stuff, and it doesn't have all this moving parts except for the actual piece of music themselves, which I'll get to. But you go to hisname.com, which I think going to yourname.com or yournamecomposer.com is the most important thing. If not, then, you know, .org, .net, something. It can't be like, you know, for instance, for me, it can't be zdanielsrocks24.com.
Don't be like John Adams. John Adams can do earbox.com because he's famous and people are going to find his music.
Well, and even then, that's not permanent.
Right.
Yeah, that's not permanent. I mean, 10 years after he dies, it's going to be harder and harder to find that website because it's not as socially relevant. So that presents a different set of issues. So what I want to bring up here is, look how simple this is. Oh, I've heard this guy. He has this clarinet piece that I heard. Okay, well, I'm going to touch his music page. I'm going to, you know, look. I'm going to be like, well, it's for winds. And, it's none of these. Maybe it's under chamber. No, it's not here. I mean, is it a solo piece? Crosswinds. That was the name of it. That's got clarinet in it. And then you click it, and then this is something that I've modeled a little bit in my own website even, is every piece he has written, and every piece I think everyone writes, should have a page of their own. Like, this is a dedicated web page to this piece. This is everything you need to know about the piece. Program notes. Abbreviated notes, you know. A score to peruse. When has this been performed? Is it being premiered? You know, how do I purchase it? You know, do I have the need to, you know, report the work? I think that's something that you don't have to do per piece. But you get the concept. Everything you need to know about this piece is in one place. You don't have to get the sound file from SoundCloud, the score from Isu, the, you know, I don't know, the performance from his separate performance calendar. Everything you need to know about this piece is in one place. This is a well-designed website, and this is something that I think more and more composers should move to, because there's one thing that irks me more than any other, and that is whenever you go to a composer's website that I'm interested in, and it's literally just an HTML list of their works and where I can acquire them. It's like, this doesn't actually help me. I mean, all that is a catalog. Like, it's I guess it'd be useful if I'm John Adams or Philip Glass or someone, but I'm not famous.
If you go to Adams' website, you do have an individual page for each work.
Yeah, you do. I'm just saying, like, he could get away with not having that, but
yeah, and lots of I think a lot of, you know, older composers who did not come to prominence in the age of the internet just have, you know, the very bare bones website that has that kind of listing on there. And there's nothing wrong with bare bones in the sense that it's not fancy. I mean, Kyle's website isn't like a bunch of flashy lights, you know, and buttons.
Yeah, but it's a great website.
Right. But you can find the stuff you need to find very quickly. And for a composer, the stuff you need to find means your music. You know, it doesn't mean, you know, your music, maybe your bio, events. You know, it doesn't mean your you know, blog, even though he does have a blog up there, just nice.
Right, and I do too, right. But it's just like a footnote.
It doesn't mean anything else. It means music.
Yeah, like
whatever makes it easiest to find and to look at and to buy your music is how your website should be designed.
Right, and like, you know, like, this is an example of something. This is just a different way to do it. You know, this is how I do it on my website. Just, you know, it's everything you need to know about the piece. This is one place. I mean, this is a complicated piece. There's a lot of explainers, but you get the idea. And you know, if it's something that is significant, something that you really want to drive home to people that this is something you do, okay. Make sure it's even easier to find. I mean, I've got a major work called Polyphonate that I literally just go to zachdaniels.com/polyphonate and it pulls up everything about it, and if they want more details, they can go to the works page. And that is so key. And there's a reason why I don't have a sound file for this piece, by the way. But in general, everything you need to know about it is in one place, easy to find, and you need to make sure that all the stuff is as kind of permanent as possible. Because the other thing that I will occasionally see is people will, for instance, use SoundCloud, the free version. I'm going to go back to the main screen here. They'll use something like SoundCloud, which is, you know, perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with SoundCloud. But, well, I mean, there are issues, but I'm not going to go into what those issues are. The problem is you use something like SoundCloud or, you know, anything like that, and you have a certain limit. I think it's like an hour free on SoundCloud. I could be wrong, but I think it's an hour. You hit that hour, and then you write the next piece. Then that first piece that was in that hour is no longer available. So if I'm on your website perusing, your magnum opus #1, it just has a not just no sound file, but a broken sound file. That is worse. Because it shows a lack of care.
And brings up another issue of making sure to check your website and any internet presence you have from time to time to guard against that, so that you can tell if something's broken, you go and fix it. Right.
Like, for instance, you know, I personally don't use SoundCloud anymore, but I still maintain it just to make sure no one else steals my music that's on there, basically. And I make sure that everything on there still works. And if I have an update on a piece that's on there, I go ahead and update it. But that's it. There's nothing new on there. I just make sure that it still exists, because I do know there's a few people that I've encouraged them not to, but have used SoundCloud as the main means of listening to certain pieces of mine and demoing them. And because of that, I maintain it at least. I don't like it, but I do it because, you know, it's kind of, it's not really advertisement, but it's more just smart marketing. And because you don't want to have bad marketing. Because, I mean, yeah, any press is good press, and there's no such thing as bad press. Those are perfectly valid. But when it comes to an online presence, a broken website basically shows lack of care. So, that's all I wanted to say, or all we wanted to say about the websites. Jacob, you have anything to close out on this topic?
Nope.
Yeah. Anyways,
that about covers it, I think.
All right. Yeah. So, do you want to introduce this next bit?
Yeah. Moving on. There's a somebody's doing a series. It's Fahad Siadat is a composer doing a series on New Music Box called "The Future of Choral Music." And I encourage you to go to the website and read some of these articles. He's talking about some interesting things. But in his first post a couple of weeks ago, he started talking about choral music and how it fits into the composition world today. And one of the big points he brought up, and one that I think is very pertinent, is that there seems to be a kind of wall of separation between choral composition and instrumental composition in today's music world. Zach, you've seen this?
Yes, I have.
Yes, and what he's trying to address is why has this happened, and what can composers do to get their music out there to choirs, and to get it actually performed. Because I mean, this wall of separation, there is choral music being written. And if you go to a choral concert, a lot of choral directors actually do a lot of new music. However, new music they do oftentimes is what we were saying.
I was saying this is the big caveat, people.
Yeah. However, the new music they do often isn't very good. And I think, yeah, and I think we've been seeing for a while a move of I hate using this term, but I guess I'll say serious composers. More composers whose mind is, I won't say academic, but what I would call art-minded composers who are writing not and I'm going to keep doing that, but who are very much invested in the craft as a whole, who write music that has not just singability and accessibility, but artistic merit. And a lot of the choral music we hear nowadays is kind of a lot of the same thing.
So they won't like me playing my toaster with them? Probably not.
But Zach, do you have any? I have my own thoughts. Do you have your take on why this might be the case?
Yes. So my first semester here, we had someone from the publishing industry who is also a composer. Will not name them because I don't want to get anybody in trouble. But he did mention that there's kind of multiple factors that are pulling into this because, back 4 years ago, this was kind of when the trends really started. Where I'd say at the pace it is now. This is when the pace was set. So he was talking about how the problem is, and there's not really a true coordination or correlation as to why this is, but a lot of the non-sacred choral works that he gets on his desk to say, this is something we should publish or this isn't, is very poorly notated. Like, that's a stupid thing, but it's true. And I don't know why. I personally think choral music is easier to notate than instrumental music, especially that have a complex variety. Again, that's just my opinion, but I look at this and it's just like, okay, sure. And then I even asked him, or no, I didn't ask him. I think, one of our undergrads asked, hey, so, why don't they just edit it for you? And then he responded, we send it to them, because obviously if it's minor edits, if it's just formatting, they do that. That's what the publisher does.
Right, but if it's that's what they're for.
Edit, dude, you have to take this whole piece down a whole step, because otherwise we will not be able to get you a choir to sing this. Mm-hmm. They just won't do it, because my personal theory is a lot of people, whenever they write choral music, they're writing for a local choir that they're familiar with. Mm-hmm. And because of that, they're used to certain talents, certain ranges, certain isms of that choir. And choirs are much more niche in, kind of their strengths and all that than instrumental ensembles tend to be, because the limitations of the human voice. But they don't take into account that, maybe this piece in E, maybe I should have a version of it in D. And that's a very simple thing. I would think that's common sense. But a lot of them just don't see the point. They're like, you don't know what you're talking about. And they'll send it to the next publisher who does the same thing. Third publisher does the same thing. Fourth, fifth, sixth, etc. And again, there's no true correlation because, he again stated this was everywhere from novice composers to well-seasoned, often heavily awarded composers. And my personal theory is not just that, but also I think a little bit on what you said, Jacob, on kind of a lack of care. Because, a composer like me, for instance, I guess I'm what you would call the academic composer in your argument. For me, it'd just be like, I could spend 10 minutes editing that, or I could spend 10 minutes with my toaster.
I think perhaps with that specific issue, part of it also might just be if you're a composer who spends most of their time in the instrumental world, and then it's like, I'm going to write a piece for choir, and you don't, and you may think, it's just choir, it's just voices, this won't be that hard, and you don't actually take the time to really dig in and learn how choral pieces work, how the human voice works, how they're edited, then you're really not going to end up with something that's very good. We have an easy example from music history in our good friend Beethoven, who his choral music isn't bad. like I love singing the Ninth and listening to it and all this, but you can tell as a singer that he specialized in writing instrumental music, because his vocal writing isn't quite as we'll say idiomatic as some of his contemporaries. And of course, writing music that stretches the boundaries and is challenging is one thing. Writing music that's excessively hard to sing because you don't know how to write for the voice is another thing. And I don't think Beethoven didn't know how to write for the voice, but I think that he was definitely better at writing for instruments than he was at writing for voice. And so I think that may be a factor as well. Just not as much education or as much experience in that area, causing there to be errors that maybe could be avoided.
I can definitely agree to that. I mean, and I think also part of it is, so one of the big things that is being focused on in, multiple composition programs I've been a part of now is writing music that can get performed, stuff that can get played. And as a result, unless you're writing, kind of a capstone work of some sort, you are to stay away from large ensembles. And the problem is, I mean, there's a lot of good choral music that you can do for just 4 or 5 singers.
Mm-hmm.
But once you get down to that, there's kind of a self-feeding system. There's something that I talked with a previous ensemble director of mine, that there's just a correlation between getting how hard it is to get those 5 choral folks to commit versus the 5 instrumentalists. Mm-hmm. And I think that, at least for me, is part of what not really deters me from writing for voice, but just kind of reinforces my current beliefs of, because I mean, I've had to scrap together a choir before, and it is 10 times harder than putting together an instrumental group.
And, it's very difficult to get singers, and then when you get them, it's difficult to get them to practice and to actually learn the music.
It's a commitment factor, and that's not to say that they're bad musicians. I mean, some of the best musicians I've ever met are singers, but and even some of the brightest musicians. I'm not saying that they can't do it because they're dumb. They're, again, some of the smartest people I know are choral musicians and even choral composers that they could outclass me in an instant, musically speaking. But I mean, part of this goes back to, and Jacob, you're familiar with this, we've talked about this a lot. You go back, and it's kind of just commitment, kind of a cost of entry type of thing. So, I mean, Jacob, for instance, how much does it cost for just a passable guitar?
$300 to $500 for something at the entry level that'll sound good.
Right. So, now, you're joining a choir. What's the point of entry?
It's 0.
Wrong. It's the cost of a black folder.
No, 99 cents for a folder.
Yeah.
Right.
So already, before you purchase music or a footrest for your guitar or extra picks, better strings, a case, a strap, any of that, it's instantly a higher point of entry. And humans by nature, we care more about things that we've invested in. Like, for instance, I have a beautiful TV in the living room. I am very invested in that TV. If anything happens to it, I would probably commit murder on whoever did it. Whereas, this TV in here that I have in my office, it's about half the price. It's not half the quality, but it's half the price. I'm not going to care as much if someone hurts it. I'm still going to be a little PO'd, but I'm still just going to kind of be like, well, I mean, it's not like I invested that much in it. And that's just kind of human nature. So, I mean, it's kind of a sliding scale, and a very interesting one at that. And that's why you see, in general, there are definitely exceptions, but as far as getting people to commit, and most composers can probably hear me on this, it's easiest to get a string player to really commit once you get them to sign on. It's a little bit easier to get a woodwind player. Bit easier than that to get a brass player. Bit easier than that to get, like, percussion or guitar, things like that, or a pianist. People who don't always have to buy their instruments even, but, sometimes do. And then after that, you get into things like I'll just say singers in general, where it's low to no cost of entry. I mean, I still remember people complaining in my undergrad.
Harder to get them to commit. You're even saying easier, but
right, yeah. So
right.
You know what I mean. But
I don't know that the sliding scale is necessarily that simple. I mean, with strings and woodwind,
it's sliding. There's gray areas, yeah.
Yeah.
But in general, like, if you think through all the musicians you've tried to get a hold of, Jacob, I mean, which ones have been the most reliable? It doesn't always follow that scale, but in general. It's fascinating, isn't it?
A lot of them have all equally unreliable. Actually, I've had the best luck I've had is with solo singers.
I can see that, because whenever you go for a solo singer, but again, this is outside of choral music, but a solo voice thing, you're getting someone who in general is better, and generally the people that are better at that have worked harder, and so therefore they're willing to put in the effort, because they're probably already taking private lessons, doing contests, and probably pretty involved in singing. So they're going to be more
I think for me,
vested.
A great deal of the reason is when I write for solo voice, I tend to write for someone specific, who I already know I want to work with.
Well, and that also helps.
Right.
But so back to the choir thing. I mean, do you think that my previous statements, though, kind of align with that issue with the choir thing of kind of point of entry? Solo singers aside. Yeah,
and I mean it does apply to solo singers as well, but yeah, I completely agree with you. It's the buy-in, and it's not just a money buy-in; it's a time buy-in.
Oh,
because the human voice is a natural instrument that most of us have, barring those with vocal disabilities, and pretty much everyone who can talk can also sing. It's a natural ability that humans have. And to go sing in a choir, you don't really need, it's good to take lessons and it's good to practice, but you don't have to get started.
So
to get really good.
It's not a good tone, but you can produce it.
Right. No, to get really good, it's a completely different issue. I mean, it's every bit as difficult to become a world-class vocalist as it is, a violinist or a pianist or guitarist or what have you. But that it's that initial buy-in that I think applies. I think it applies to solo singers as well, because people will, especially in the undergraduate world, because people will start off and be like, well, I want to be a singer, and they haven't necessarily made that buy-in yet. Yeah. But especially to choirs. And one of the things that the author of this article on Music Box brought up is that this problem is exacerbated even more with choirs, because the majority of choirs are not professional ensembles, and they're avocational. It's amateur singers, and even at the university level, a lot of the people in your university choir, they are not your music majors. They're other people at the university who like to sing, which doesn't make them worse singers, but it widens the pool so that the buy-in, it widens the pool to people who also have not made this buy-in and have not even made a commitment at the university level, which is from a simple percentage-wise, you're probably going to get people who are less skilled, and can't necessarily pull off the chops that a professional can. And so when you're writing for a choir, you can't really assume that you're writing for professional musicians, like you can if you're going to write an instrumental piece.
You assume a certain level with a string quartet.
An instrumental piece that's not meant to be for young musicians, because of course there are plenty of composers who write for high school and grade school bands and orchestras and stuff like this. But but we simply don't have as many full professional choirs, which kind of and I think part of this issue. I mean, I don't know that is necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I think it's part of the beauty of choral music and the beauty of singing that anyone can do it. and that you can get together a room of people from many different backgrounds and many different careers, who can all bring their voices together. But it does, and part of the problem with avocational choirs is not necessarily the individuals in it, but our lack of good music education. You know, the cutting of programs at the primary and secondary school level. But it brings up the issue, I think, for us composers, is how do we write for choir in a way that we can we can maintain our musical integrity, but still make these pieces accessible to performers who may not have been professionally trained. And oh, sorry, you were about to say something.
Oh no, I wasn't. I was just.
And the author here, Fahad Siadat, has, since this initial article that kind of provoked this discussion, has published 2 other articles where he's started to talk about ways that composers can make their pieces accessible to non-professional performers in the choral world. And one of the big things he's talked about is indeterminacy, which I think is interesting, because he's talking about writing polyphonically, in ways that aren't traditional polyphony, but rather involve repetition of short cells at different levels.
So
which is something that
game music.
And a lot of there's a great composer named Lansing McCloskey who teaches at University of Miami, and he's written some stuff. I don't know that his goal was as much to be accessible to performers as it was to rethink time in music, where it's polyphony without meter, where you start each part at a different time and they gradually come together. This particular author has also talked about just regular indeterminacy, aleatory music, writing music that allows the singers to take some creative ownership. And while I don't think that just using aleatoric music and cells and indeterminacy is the answer to how to write choral music that can actually be performed, I think it's part of the answer. I mean, I think it's a way that we can write interesting music that's also able to be performed.
I can agree with that a little bit, and as someone who dips heavily into kind of like the aleatoric and experimental and chance-based stuff, there is an element of kind of, oh, this is cool, this is creative, but it's a double-edged sword. Anytime there's something aleatoric or chance-based or experimental, you can eliminate the buy-in cost, but people will take it less seriously in the ensemble that's performing it. And that's just a fact. I mean,
that's true.
Like, for instance, if I were to take, let's just say, my piece Nocturne for Dice, if I were to take that to the choir here at the University of Oklahoma, they'd be instantly interested, because, dude, we get to sit there and toss dice on stage. This is going to be great. But are they actually going to pay attention to the nuance and the rules and the, make sure you're matching this, make sure that you're blending, that kind of thing? Right. I mean,
and I think that's a completely legitimate concern, that by giving them this indeterminate music, we can just cater to some of the problems created by the low buy-in cost, because it feels like, we don't even have to do anything anymore. They're just letting us make it up on the spot.
Well, that's not just choirs. I mean, that's something that, I think back to a final example before I'm done with this, but I think back to, we did NC by Terry Riley my freshman year at Glendale High School. And a lot of people near the end of the piece were sitting there just playing random things. They were not playing by the rules of the piece, and you could tell recording. Like, one of my friends was sitting there playing Star Wars. I love Star Wars. It has no place in NC. Like, well, no, and that's just kind of thing. And you know, his response was, "No one's gonna know the difference." It's like, yeah, but you're ruining the piece.
And they will know the difference. I mean, they might not hear, oh, he's playing Star Wars, but it's going to come across differently.
Yeah.
Than if you'd played the real piece. Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, either way, I mean, let us know what you guys think. I mean, you know, about everything. I mean, everything from the website stuff to, you know, this stuff. And, you know, this is it's a very interesting topic. And this is something that, you know, this is something that Jacob and I, for instance, we conflict significantly on, because I'm kind of on the side of the fence of, you know, I've seen too many people get burnt by choirs to even be interested. And, you know, Jacob's just mad that I have a permanent request for a choral piece on my desk that I refuse to fill. I mean, and I get why Jacob and other people are upset about that. I'm going to get rid of that window.
I'm not upset about it. I never said I was upset about it.
You just think it's foolish.
I just think you don't. I don't think you give vocal music its fair shake. But that's a topic for another day.
But you know why I don't, and this is why. Like,
I mean, I know why. I just don't agree with you.
That's fair.
And like I share many of your concerns about the medium. But I think there's a lot there to work with, and there's a lot of potential to move forward. And ultimately, it's up, yes, it to composers. Because we have to do a good job of writing for choir in a way that's idiomatic and not falling down the trap that the guest you mentioned talked about, where we're just like, it's like writing for instruments. Here you go.
Yeah, and then ignoring the editor and saying, "I know what's best." There's a reason why we pay him to edit your stuff, guys.
But ultimately, I think it comes down. It's an education issue, not just purely education, but I think conductors and directors have to be able to make their musicians be responsible for their music. And I think like with most things, it starts in the schools, in both the
we
public
can talk
schools.
About that issue next week.
Yeah,
that's a whole nother can of worms.
but we are out of time.
Yeah, so we can discuss that next week. But yeah, in the meantime, let us know what you think down there. You know, Composer Talk week, whatever it is. Signing out.
All right. See you later, peeps. Ba-bum-ba, ba-bum-ba.